Hey there, it's Nolan, and today in this video, I'm here to show you how we help B2B companies deploy a signal based prospecting engine that generates a full sales pipeline for around 15% of the cost of a new SDR hire. Okay, and I've been in this space long enough, generated millions in total revenue across all of my clients, and of course, I have all the case studies and everything detailing that. Okay, so straight to the ball game, right? So first and foremost, what we do is we get actual buying signals that scream that your client, your prospect, your buyers actually need you right now, right? And this is like two of the most important things that you would want in any business, right? They need you, they need you right now, right? That's just, very, very prime targets, very, very prime prospects for you, your sales team, and your sales reps, right? And it's because, okay, most marketing agencies, or I don't, if you have an in-house marketing department, typically what they do is, for example, you have the service, right? You have the service, and what they tend to do is they assume that these industries need it, right? So let's just say industry 1, right? Industry 2, industry 3, right? And on paper that sounds correct because, for example, if you're selling commercial cleaning, right? Commercial cleaning, and then you try to reach out to, for example, real estate, property management, right? Or and something else, right? And at first that sounds logical, that works. You'll definitely get a bunch of replies, a bunch of positive leads, a bunch of prospects that way, but you're only assuming that they need you right now. It's based on assumption and not actual data, right? So we flip the script. Okay, like this used to work around 3-4 years ago, but now you really have to be much more competitive. So we do that by scraping signals like if they're currently hiring, they just got funded, right? Or they're already using a similar technology or tool that you're offering, which could signal that hey, they use A, so they will definitely use B, right? Or your solution, right? Recent expansion, etc. Okay, and we get these buying signals across multiple vendors depending on who your ICP is. So if, for example, you're more local, then you should try and scrape Google Maps, right? If you want the text and the tools that they use, built with is the best. Store leads for e-commerce, and then LinkedIn Sales Nav is kind of just like a really, really good, you know, like database in general, because most of the other databases and most of the lead vendors out there, like for example Apollo, Zoom Info, they get all of their data from LinkedIn, right? And so we get those data, we verify those through Million Verify and Email Finder. You can use what you want. These are just the tools that we've used very, very much throughout the years, and have made really, really good partnerships with the developers and with the founders, with the people behind this. So we've continued to use this, and then from there, once you get the contacts, we use Clay. And basically Clay is one of those tools that allows us to send hyper personalized messages that seems like you've researched each and every prospect, even though you're doing it at scale. Okay, and so I'll show you an example here, but just to kind of have you visualize it, right? So if you're running ads, or if you're running, let's say, a very wide blast, a very generic campaign, let's say this is your campaign, right? Let's just put C. So you have this campaign, you have this offer, and you try and reach as many people as you can, like similar to what I drew earlier, right? Don't mind my drawing. I've never been good at art, but this is just to show you and to let you visualize. So you try and reach as much people as you can. They're seeing the same thing. They're seeing the same pitch, right? They're seeing the same offer. They're seeing the same, CTA. Like maybe you would have a couple of, variants. You would have a couple of ad sets. You would have a couple, but essentially they're seeing the same thing, right? Or a lot of these people are, being pulled, right? Let's say maybe, 1,000 of these people, they're seeing the same thing. That's how it's been, and that's how it was for the past couple of years. But now, okay, what you can do, especially through AI and what we've been applying, what we've been getting results with, is that you have this one person, right? For example, let's just call him John. Okay. Apologies if your name is John. I don't mean to, use you as an example, but essentially, you can now make a totally one-to-one pitch, one-to-one sales letter, one-to-one message, one-to-one offer for John, specifically for John, and his buying signals, right, and all of his other data. You can even pull their address if that makes sense. Like we've had previously, like one campaign that did very very well. It was for a commercial equipment company, wherein we basically just mentioned, hey, is it fine to do a demo at blank address, and then we just mentioned their address, their office address, and that somehow did very very well. But essentially, you could have one totally unique thing for John, right? And then you can have another totally unique thing for example, we just call him Peter, right? You can have a totally unique thing as well for Peter, right? So, and then you would think that how can we do this? It takes so much time. Like, what if we're reaching out, or we have a total addressable market of 100,000 plus? You can already do this, and that's the beauty. So you can do this for John, for Peter, and whoever else, and basically have different scripts, different pitches, different sales letters, different lead magnets for each and every person that you're reaching out to, right? And so this is just again an example, and this is just from one of my personal campaigns. And basically, I just mentioned, like, hi, name, I saw that company is looking for sales development representatives, which that ties me back to buying signals, right? Wanted to ask, how long does it usually take to take your new sales reps to start booking consistent calls? A lot of mention their niche. We talk to deal with the same problem, 5 to 6 months, blah blah blah. We help. If that seems useful, are you open to a short 3-minute screen share video to show you how we did it, right? And then again, that's actually, this is one of the more simpler enrichments that we've ran. So we just found out that this specific prospect was hiring sales reps right now. Found out their exact niche service. We use the data to make our outreach relevant and bespoke for each prospect, which is in my field, especially if we've been doing since I've been doing B2B ever since I was like a teenager. Being bespoke and being human, I think, just increases your chances of maintaining that partnership and maintaining that relationship with with your business partners. And again, especially with the rise of AI, I think the need or the want for more human interactions will only just go up, right? I really think we're going to get there, but that's a problem for a different day. But again, it looks personal, but really what they don't know is we're doing that at scale, right? And so basically he replied yes, okay, and then I sent the lead magnet and everything, and then from there I can call him up and basically just say, hey, I sent you this, what's the problem? Like, that's essentially what you want to communicate, right? You always want to be like a therapist and like a doctor, because not only can you build trust that way, you can also build authority, and you're actually putting a solution to their problem, okay? And so once you have that, once you have the lead list and everything and the buying signals, okay, let me just delete this real quick. Next is, how can you do as much of that as possible, right? And I want to emphasize doing as much volume as you can, right? But also, we want to pair that with being as relevant as you can, because like with other companies or what other businesses do is like they try and do more and then they sacrifice the quality, and then some businesses they do less but they have more quality. So we want to be that middle ground wherein we are doing more, right, but we're also very relevant, right? So that's like the ideal spot you want to be in, especially if you're trying to scale your sales team, right? And then next, so set up infrastructure. The main thing here is, for example, if your total addressable market is 100,000 plus, maybe even more than, maybe even less than that, and if you're only sending 100 to 300 messages per day, you're gonna grow big. You're eventually gonna grow, but you're not gonna grow as fast as you want to, right? And that's the reason why most companies are also, you know 10 times bigger, 100 times bigger, because they do so much more. They have more employees, more departments, more sales reps, or more systems, more. They just do more, and that's why they're bigger, right? Like when they move mountains just because of the amount of resources they allot, the amount of things that they can accomplish within just one day, one quarter, 1 month, 1 week, right? And so the way we've set up our own system is this is just our testing, like sort of starting volume. So what we do is we set up 200 email accounts at 5 cents per day per account, which basically means we're sending around 1,000 emails per day minimum, okay, across all of our clients, right? Which basically that means we're reaching out to 10,000 to 20,000 prospects per month. Okay, and this volume alone actually already allows us to reach national or even international markets. Because, for example, if your total addressable market is 100,000 and we can reach this number per month, we can reach them, or we can reach all of them within the same year, right? And we're only capped by this, which is, again, we can do 400, right? We can do 600, 800, 1,000, depending on the need. But this has been like historically the sweet spot for us whenever we're starting to test something, because at first, if you don't have data and you don't have the actual metrics, then you're not sure what works, right? So we test it. Once we get the data and we're sure that this works, this doesn't work, this maybe works, we cut the middle one and then just go for the two, or maybe even just go for the one that really really works, right? And so after that, you want to send them short, human, personalized messages that have value, which is what we do as well. And this is just a very very simple version of a template copy that we try and always use. So hi, of course, put their name here. Hi, Nolan, I saw you were going through pain point, right? You question them, poke the problem, bring out the pain point here again, okay? Asking, because we recently helped Google, okay, or whoever you guys are partnered up with that you think would be or would mean a lot in your industry, in your space, get X more by changing Y and Z, mind if I, and then here you insert your free value, okay? And why free value? Like some people, they're very much against the free value, the free demo, the free insight, the free trial, that sort of stuff. But the thing is, even big companies are doing free trials, free demos, and everything. And the fact that they're doing it, and the fact that they're big, means that they got big because they're doing it. So if you apply this to yourself, then you would also, in hopes, get big. And it's also because you have to remember that you're reaching out as a total stranger to these people, at least at first, right? You're reaching out as a total stranger. You're trying to, get some business, or find out what's going on with them, to see if you can help them. And the best way to establish that authority and that trust is to give them, something that's actually valuable and that would actually help them. Because from there, they will be more inclined to also respond to you or to go through with it, right? that sort of stuff. And we do our outreach across multiple channels depending again on your ICP or the type of people we're reaching, the type of prospects we want to contact. We do it via email, LinkedIn, and phone call, or just calling in general, voicemails. And this entirely depends on again the ICP, because if they're more active on LinkedIn, we'll do LinkedIn. They're more active with their emails, we'll do emails. But generally we try, like, what the best setup is typically a mix of everything. So for example, you email them, once they respond you can also send them a connect request, and then also call them to pre-qualify and verify from there, which that's actually the next bullet point. So some sample metrics. So 1,000 prospects per day times, very conservative assumption here that we just get a 0.3% meeting rate. That eventually leads to 3 meetings per day. Okay, and then let's say that that 60 meetings per month, and then assuming that again only 30% of them ever show up, right? Even after our best efforts, that's you're still left with 18 meetings, which is you multiply that with your close rate, which that typically is 10%, 20% ish. That's still 1 to 2 closed deals times your average order value. Then that's your revenue, right? And then usually, actually, after only 60 days of working together with our clients, they immediately ROI just because of this equation here. And again, this is very conservative. So like for example, if their average order value is upwards of 10,000, if they only get one deal, they already ROI. Like they would have already paid for our service, like twice, thrice, tenfold even. And this just goes up again, with your AOV, with the amount of prospects we're reaching per day, with the meeting rate, and making everything better, right? And this is just a very, very conservative assumption, and we typically get more than that. Okay, and so from there, if they say yes, which once they say yes, you want to book the demo in intro call. We typically, from here, we also give the value fast. So as you can see here, I replied immediately, right? So said yes, I replied with the appropriate resource that I was offering in the copy itself. I sent that. So I gave the value fast. I also called him immediately to verify interest and pre-qualify, and we have all the scripts and we have all the follow-up SOPs for our system. So this is very, very straightforward to do. Like, keep in mind that in this stage, like especially in this stage, you don't want to close yet. Like, you don't want to make them feel that, hey, I'm only here for the money. I'm obviously trying to sell you something. That's not what we want them to feel, because currently, right, let's say this is your prospect. Currently, if they have already said yes, they're probably also currently busy, right? They're busy, they still have a lot of questions, right? They don't know who you are, right? And so you want to just be able to get them warmed up at this point, right? You give them the value, you call them, you show them that you're a person, like, hey, I'm real, I'm not scamming you, I'm an expert, I can help you with this, blah, blah, blah. And then your primary goal is just to find the time that works for both of you, or for both of you, both of your, it could also maybe be between your prospect and your sales reps. But eventually, you want to just book that intro call to get something started and to figure out everything, and to make sure that they would even be a good prospect, a good deal, a good project for you in the first place. And if, for example, they go cold, if they get busy, which is most of the time, if the bigger they are, the busier they also are, then we lead them to our follow-up SOP, which we have a bunch of automations, again still applying the relevance and still applying the data and the buying signals that we have. So we can warm call them with it, voicemail them, LinkedIn Connect, follow-up emails, and we use a tool called Zapier, and basically this just connects all of our automations together, keeps them neat and organized all in the same place. Then eventually, if you follow up and then they say yes, still book the intro call, the demo call, so you can then feed your sales reps with as much intro calls or closing calls as much as you can. Which is, if you're a company, it doesn't matter how many sales reps or how big of a team you have. If you have sales reps, you want them to be selling, right? If you can make it that they're only selling 100% of the time, perfect, right? Because that would mean that they're, only their time is solely focused on just closing, which is closing gives you money, gives you deals, gives you profit. You get profit and then you reinvest. And if you can make them more efficient and leaner that way, you're going to scale faster, right? Because again, we're not against sales reps. We're just all about making sales reps as effective as possible. Like, this is even, I'm sure, like some of the sales reps and some of the SDRs out there, they can very much relate, but it gets tiring if you're just endlessly chasing leads, endlessly chasing John that has already said yes to you before, but now he's not replying anymore, right? So it's a big headache, and we install this system to solve that headache, right? To make them leaner, make them faster, keep that momentum, and feed them with as much calls as we can. Okay, and then from there, you close the deals and fulfill. And why our method works is because other B2B companies already use outbound as their primary source of deals and projects, and also historically, like even companies like Microsoft, Oracle, like these companies, they got big because of outbound. Like you can even search that right now. You can even research that. But there's a lot of companies out there, especially in B2B, that just got really, really, really huge because of outbound, because of calling people, emailing people, messaging people, and that's just how they grew, right? And bullet point number 2 is that decision makers are not on social media, right? Maybe they're there sometimes, but there's a very low chance, right, that they scroll there 24/7. And I want to emphasize this because, again, if you're like a CEO, a vice president, or maybe even the president of a company, especially of a big company, you're not going to be on social media. Like, you have things to do, meetings to attend to, you only check your emails, you only respond to calls, right? So that's why this has been, historically effective. Okay? You can also, by the way, hire more sales reps, which, on paper, or when you hear hiring more sales, that often gets confused with getting more. Like, you think if you have 10 sales reps, they would just immediately, magically, give you a lot more deals, which they could, but you're also paying a very, very premium price for it, right? Because sales reps, again, this is based on research, based on study, they typically spend 70 to 90% of their time just prospecting and chasing leads, right? And then you add in, the training time, you add in the softwares that you already are, purchasing for these reps. You add in the training and everything, benefits, and as the as the owner, as the CEO, you don't want them to prospect more. Like, you want them to handle more calls and sell more, because like that's the highest return on investment, or return on their time, on your sales reps time for you, right? The more they close, the more profit there is, and you just scale faster, right? And so we handle all of that. We handle your outbound pipeline, completely done for you. We handle all of what I mentioned here. Basically, we find the contacts themselves with buying signals. We segment them into different campaigns, different levels, different. We layer the different intent signals as well. Messaging, personalization, and A/B testing. The infrastructure itself. So you literally only have to close them. Like, you literally only have to do this part, and this is typically done in-house, because again, you want to be able to negotiate your own deals and get your own prices, your own expectations, set your own expectations, right? We can also even warm call them and book them on your calendar directly. And all of this is, again, this entire system is less than what one sales rep hire would cost. Okay? And that, just sounds too good to be true at first, but again, I've done this multiple times, multiple years, and I've spent, I guess, most of my young years just perfecting this and perfecting the skill of trying to get B2B companies more businesses, more deals, because like the chances are, like, usually the more I give them business, right, the more my business also grows, because at that point, if I get them a lot of money, right, then it's easy for them to also give me some money back and reinvest in the system and reinvest in what makes them the money in the first place, right? So yeah, I guess, like, we're one of the only companies, I guess, in my space that scales vertically, because most agencies, most companies out there, they try and get as much people, or as much, just as much clients that they can. Like, they really try and get as much clients as they can. We, on the other hand, we only focus on a select few clients, right? We only work with one company per product or service. So when we do work with you, you're sure to be the only one we give deals to in your niche. Because again, if we're working with several companies that does the same thing that you do, once we run this national pipeline, we end up splitting up everything, right? That's not good, right? So if we work with you, you're the only one that we work with, and we are, dedicated to really give you the results that you want and need, right? So if you want to test it out and again see if you could qualify for our guarantee, we can schedule a quick 15 to 30-minute get to know call to find out. And then, yeah, I look forward to talking to you soon. Thanks.